Hey everyone, welcome to DadsDen and Pop Culture. About, a couple weeks ago, it was like a lazy Saturday. I'm looking for something to watch. I come across Starchaser, The Legend of Orin. Sadly not in 3D in the streaming that I did, but I thought, what the heck? I kind of remembered seeing the videotape for this in the children's section of the video park, video store that I worked at 35 something years ago. Yeah. Wow. I'm old. Anyhow, I didn't really know much about it. So, throw it on, and if it's terrible, I'll just turn it right back off. It's no big deal. Really kind of caught my attention, though, early on. The design, animation, and I kind of got into it. I really liked it, so I thought, I'm going to definitely do a review on this one. So here it is. So let's jump in. We're going to run through the movie, talk about it, the different the scenes, the plot, etc. Chat a little bit about the people who put it together. The drill. Now, there are going to be spoilers in this one because there's actually kind of a pretty pivotal moment in the film that happens pretty early. So I couldn't really go through much of this without spoiling stuff or having to put the spoiler sign up anyway. So we'll just start off with it. All right. So Starchaser, The Legend of Orin, 1985. We begin with space, which, as we know, is the final frontier. Now, this movie was initially, like that poster showed, released in 3D by Atlantic Releasing Corporation. They're the folks who release such films as Valley Girl, Night of the Comet, and Teen Wolf. Stephen Hahn, veteran TV animator, produced this primarily to give his South Korean animators something to do in between other projects. Now, he also directed the film. And here we have the title, Starchaser, The Legend of Orin. And if there is a complaint to have about this movie, this whole opening is a little bit slow. The pacing of the film is not bad, but there's a few places where it slows down a little bit. And the music, again, not bad, but a little underwhelming in places. And, well, one of the big complaints that the critics had was that this was very derivative of Star Wars. Now, at the time, Star Wars was just such a massive hit. And it's not the kind of movie that critics were generally going to like. But it became a cultural phenomenon. And it became a very simple thing for critics who maybe didn't know much about the genre to call almost anything sci-fi just derivative of Star Wars. Oh, it's just derivative of Star Wars. Okay, now, truth be told, there are definitely some things in here that are derivative of Star Wars. But let's not forget that Star Wars was derivative of some Akira Kurosawa films, Dune, Flash Gordon, and some other things as well. So that's not that odd in movies. It's all about the execution and what you bring to the project. If this was just a basic rip-off of Star Wars, unless, of course, it was a really, really, really entertaining rip-off of Star Wars, then maybe we would all dig it. So the story begins in the mines of Trinia, where these folks are working, digging out these crystals that are very important as basically an energy source. Okay. They are overseen by robots with laser whips. So these are the robots are the bad guys. Among the miners is Orin, voiced by Joe Colligan, who has grown up down here. And he's not a big fan of the bad guys, but there's not a lot he can do about it. The mindset of the folks down here primarily is one of survival. You do what you have to do to get your daily bread. Now, Orin is working near his, I guess you could just say, girlfriend, Ilan, voiced by Noelle North, and her grandfather. And he's trying to sort of take up the slack for her grandfather, who's obviously old guy. He's having a little trouble working. So Orin, right off the bat, you could tell, is a good guy. He's sacrificing himself for others. And something about Elan, the look mostly, really reminded me of Melanie Anderson. You would know from the Flash Gordon movie, 1980, who played Dale Arden. It's neither here nor there. It just hit me when I was watching it. We also meet Orin's little brother, who is blind. And at this point in the film, there is this tremor, and we see a massive rock fall right on top of a miner. And you can see, like, there's his feet. So right off the bat, you're kind of like, okay, this isn't just a kid's movie. It's not exactly graphic, but it's a little more graphic than, say, some films might be. And so the woman is mourning the loss of this man, and a robot overseer immediately rushes over to whip her because he's dead. He's of no use to anyone now. Get back to work. So again, not good guys. And when one of the robots then turns around and kicks his blind brother because he just got in the way, Orin, using something like a laser pick, it almost looks like a jackhammer, tries to fight back, but not very successfully. And so Orin's beating by the robots is interrupted by a call to prayer to their god. Now, this is sort of like, it's like an altar. And you can't tell right from this shot, but the scale of this thing is really, really massive. So, and there's another image. You can kind of see the crowd there. So the people gather around, they're chanting Zygon, Zygon, Zygon before this idol. And the mouth opens and sort of looks like magma pours out of it. And this priest emerges. He's wearing this mask. And Orin is the only one in the crowd who does not kneel, although he is forced to kneel by one of the robots. And so the priest walks out. You see these flames behind him, and he addresses the crowd. The gods who have kept you alive are angry because you do not work hard enough and mine enough crystals. And there are some really nice visuals here, as you could see, and very well animated. This is a very well animated film. It deserves to be seen, I think, just for that. And we'll get to it in a minute. There's actually some really cool innovations in animation that they have here. And that's one of the things that immediately caught my eye, was just like, wow, this looks really good. This is not just your normal thing. They pan across all these people and look at the faces, and there's a difference to the faces. They're not all just the same face. It was really interesting. And so they're all kneeling. He comes out, and this bridge extends from where they are over to the altar. Okay. And there's this massive container of crystals that then starts moving across the bridge. It's kind of like a conveyor system almost, something like that. And the people wait, and then it returns filled with these parcels of bread. And so all the people rush up to grab at the bread to get something. It's a very bleak existence. But again, this is all these people have ever known. They have never been out of these caves. They've never seen the sun. They don't even really know they don't even know what there is up there. They have no idea. So back to work. And while Orin's brother is eating the bread that he secured, Orin hits something strange with his pick. And it turns out to be the hilt of a sword. And Elan's grandfather recognizes it and says, we must hide it from the overseers. They must not see this thing. And when one of them shows up, the old man runs at the robot to distract it. And he is whipped and ultimately killed right there. So again, kids movie, not quite. And we've had 2 deaths already, and we're only maybe 5 minutes into the film. So Elan, of course, cries that she has nobody now. That was her last, living relative at all. And Orin tells her that she has him. And they wonder just what it is about this sword that her grandfather thought was worth dying for. So when Orin takes it from hiding a little bit later, the blade blazes and rises up in this kind of glow. Okay, is this derivative of Star Wars? We have a glowing sort of sword. Yes. But again, you could also call it reminiscent of King Arthur, any number of myths, especially from, Western culture. So, okay, maybe a little bit. Well, the sword flies out of his hands and embeds itself in the ground and glows eerily. And then this hologram appears of this wizened old man. And he tells the people that these dark corridors are not their true home. There is a world above, a magnificent universe to which you can return if you have the courage. And he who possesses the sword possesses the power of truth. Find the blade, and you will find your freedom. And then the man disappears, and so does the blade of the sword, leaving only the hilt. And Orin picks up the hilt, and he's looking at it. And then that one man back there with his fist up in the air starts declaring, "That's all lies. That's all lies." He says, "Believing that demon, you break the most sacred commandment. Never dig up. Up is hell." Okay, well, there's always one of these in the crowd. But maybe the commandment is wrong. Maybe there's something better. And Elan swears on her grandfather that if there is a world above, she will find it. So even if Orin didn't believe, he's probably in on the quest now because his girlfriend is in on the quest. And I do like the way she takes the lead here on that one. And then the Lickspittle declares he's going to turn them into the Mind Masters, and he attacks Orin to get the sword hilt. Again, there's always a guy like this in these kind of movies. Orin, battles him off and knocks him out, and then decides they must try to find the upper world now because, at some point that guy's going to alert the Mind Masters. And Callie, his little brother, wants to go with them, but they're like, no, it's too dangerous. You stay here, with your aunt. She'll take care of you. And Elan and Orin begin their journey up. And this ultimately runs them afoul of the guys in charge because Callie follows them because he realizes that Orin has forgotten to bring the food that they're going to need. And so we get this little chase in these ore carts. Probably would have looked really cool in 3D. Temple of Doom was a year earlier, so probably some inspiration there, although it isn't like a roller coaster ride or anything like that. And while Orin fights with the robots, he yells at Callie and Elan to run, but they end up getting caught at the edge of the chasm. They manage to escape, though, on the receding bridge that we saw earlier. So Callie stays behind. Orin and Elan make it essentially across the bridge, and they emerge from the fire that you saw, behind that figure before. And they do it by hiding underneath the crystals to see something that they did not expect. There's like this high-tech ore processing facility, or processing facility. And they're starting to realize that much of what they knew and what they were told was just a lie. Now, you might ask here, well, if the bad guys have all of this, and they have robots, why would they bother with human slaves? That seems inefficient. Well, there is a reason. They do actually cover this. It's not a plot hole. So the two are quickly discovered within this complex, and they are attacked. And then they are confronted by Zygon, who turns out to be this guy. Now, that was the guy who was wearing the mask, this sort of priest. Lord Zygon, voiced by Anthony DeLongis. Now, he's an American actor, stuntman, fight choreographer, known for a role as First Mage Jal Kula, one of the Kazon in Star Trek Voyager. Played some roles in Highlander, the series, because he was an accomplished swordsman. And he taught Michelle Pfeiffer how to use the whip as Catwoman in Batman Returns. So this dude's really the real deal when it comes to geek culture, and he does a good job as the bad guy in this. I really did like him. And this is the point where I was like, yeah, I was going to have to put spoilers up pretty soon into this thing, because this is the part that really got me, that riveted my attention to this thing. Because we see him here just casually kill Ilan. Grabs her by the throat, picks her up. That's it. Okay, now you go, well, Darth Vader did that. Yes, Darth Vader did that in Star Wars to an almost nameless character that we didn't know. But this is a character we've actually had a little bit of time to get to know and kind of like. And so to me, a little bit more emotional impact. And it's right in front of Orin. He sees this happen. So Zygon sees the sword with no blade, sees the hilt, and he seizes it and begins to choke Orin when the sword hilt glows, and he drops it and backs away. So he seems to know what this is. When Orin makes a break for it, the robots start shouting or start shooting at him. And in so doing, because all those crystals are around, they set off explosions. And Orin then, he escapes. He returns to the wreckage, finds the hilt, and heads for the upper world after one last embrace with Ilan. And because of the cave-in, Zygon does not pursue. He believes that Orin is dead and the sword is buried. So it seemed like we were going to have this big adventure of Orin and Ilan trying to reach the upper world, and now it's twisted a little bit. And I really like that. So Orin begins working day and night digging up, running out of food and running out of water at one point, and one night being attacked by these sort of weird leeches that crawl out of the soil, which leads to him losing that digging tool. And he's seemingly now trapped, like there's nowhere to go. And he yells at the sword, what have you to tell me now, old man? Is this your magnificent universe? And holding the sword aloft, it appears to push, like there's a blade there, through that last layer of soil. And so he sees like light above, and he emerges, and it's from the soil. It's actually kind of reminiscent to me of Ariel when she emerges from the water onto that rock, in Little Mermaid. And so he sees stars for the first time. And we see him walking through this alien landscape at night. And it sort of looks, like a paradise, but it's also extremely dangerous. And what you see here, when he started to drink from a pool, these eyes appear and then move up, and it's like a reptilian head. He kind of pulls back, and this thing comes out of the water after him. And then it gets worse. And this part's pretty friggin' rad, just from the animation and the voice work and all that. He's confronted by these two cyborgs who are really almost more like ghouls. And they pursue him, arguing over who will get what body parts from him after they capture him. Very effective, very creepy, kind of horrifying, honestly. Again, probably shouldn't have been in our children's section. And it's kind of worse than just like a predatory animal chasing you. What these things want to do to him. And presumably losing some parts, he would have to become maybe one of them. So they capture him, and they have him like tied up to this tree. And so they're preparing for, I guess, basically vivisection. One of the cyborgs discovers the sword hilt and takes it from his belt. And then the others start fighting over it. And during the fight, the sword glows, and this sort of invisible blade seems to appear. Like it's almost like catches the light. And it slices one of the cyborgs in half. Okay. Wow. Right? Again, not exactly a kid's movie. It's not quite at the level of, say, a Ralph Bakshi film. But it's close. It bridges that sort of divide, kind of like Rock and Rule, which I reviewed a few weeks ago. So, I mean, you can see it's pretty horrifying and but also pretty amazing for like a mid-'80s animated film. You're not going to see stuff like that in a Star Wars movie until quite a bit later. So when the one cyborg kind of throws the hilt away, the leader attempts to grab it and impales himself on the blade. So we've lost Random Miner, Grandfather, Elon, and 2 cyborgs now. And you see it on screen. It's never off screen. So the remaining cyborg thinks this is some kind of human magic. And Orin plays along and uses it to free himself and flee. And then other cyborgs start giving chase. And the one we saw earlier approaches his dead comrade with a mind to scavenge for parts. Well, Orin, flees through the swamp and finally runs into Dag de Brimy, voiced by Carmen Argenziano. He blasts the 2 pursuing mandroids, which is what he calls them, and then tells Orin he has a couple seconds to tell him who he is and what he's doing here before he gets the same. Argenziano had a role on Stargate SG-1, a lot of other TV and movie work, does a great job in this one. He's going to be sort of our Han Solo roguish pilot for this film. Is he exactly like Han Solo? No, not really. So Orin tries to stab him with the sword, but the blade is no longer there. So, having no other choice, he explains where he came from, and Dag thinks he's lying. Everyone knows that robots have done all the mining for the last 1,000 years. There are no people down there. But this interrogation is cut short when this swamp monster appears behind Dag and grabs him. And Orin manages to drive off the beast with his sword. So, okay, sometimes the blade is there, sometimes the blade is not. What does that all mean? Well, Dag's appreciative, and then he tells the kid to beat it. But Orin isn't going anywhere because, frankly, Orin doesn't know where else to go. Now, Dag is a smuggler, kind of a criminal, and he's in the middle of a job. He's going to try to steal a bunch of these crystals from this main city complex on Trinia. And during this time, he's communicating with an associate via what kind of looks like an old brick cell phone. So not as high-tech as they maybe thought it was going to be. While he's doing this, he gets interrupted by this little thing. Well, he calls it a starfly, which maybe there are some bugs, kind of like fireflies on this planet. Who knows? But it seems to be more than a simple insect. And thankfully, this isn't Filmation, or else it would have this really cutesy voice provided by Scheimer. I'm just messing around. I love Filmation, and I love Scheimer. But sometimes those characters I'm not as in love with. So Dag then gets alerted that a pyramid patrol, as they call it, a ship, will be on them in a few seconds. So they both haul ass to Dag's ship, which fires back at the enemy ship and destroys one of them. Now, these ships are actually the first, or at least very, very, very early computer animation. What they apparently did, they had vector animation of these ships, which they transferred to paper with a digital plotter and then painted them in the traditional way. So this apparently had never been done before, and it's very cool, and it really does give you some really nice spaceship movement and some pretty cool, like, space battles and, well, just ship battles in general. Definitely something to look for in this, especially if, you're really into computer animation, you want to know the history of everything. This would be something to look at. So on board the ship, we meet Arthur. This is the voice that Dag has been talking to. It is essentially the ship's computer. This little thing comes out, voiced by Les Tremayne. And we also get to see Dag's ship, which is very cool. The 2 engine things on the side will move, they'll rotate, and they're kind of sitting in that thing on the end of that neck, but the neck can also go like down and all that. So it's sort of a variable geometry ship, but very cool. And the design in this is really good. You'll see as we go through. There's some really amazing stuff in this movie. So they launch towards this giant shipping complex. And I think they called the crystals rubidamite, I believe is the word. So, this is what Dag's going to try to hit and steal some crystals from. The bad guys detect something coming in from the swamp and assume it is mandroids. Love the aesthetic here of these guys. Their aesthetic reminds me a lot more, actually, of the Flash Gordon movie from 1980 than it does Star Wars. Really nice stuff, though. They got like that little logo. Okay. So this kind of gets the defenses up in the complex. They know something's coming. And we get some lasers firing. This is like this laser cannon with this dude on it. Now, that's definitely reminiscent of some stuff we saw in Star Wars on the moon of Yavin. The guy's in that little thing. Okay. I mean, there's no gun on that thing, but it's just, it looks a little similar to it. So we get some cool ship maneuvering, from their perspective as they're moving around. Really well done. And they get through the defensive layer and land. So Dag thinks he's going to steal these crystals. Here we get our first look at another important character, Silica, a fembot. And she's maybe just about my favorite character in the film. Kind of sassy, even though, well, you'll see what happens to her, but she's very cool. And I'll be honest with you too, another one of the somewhat more grown-up parts of the movie, because she has, dare I say it, a shiny metal butt, and we do see a fair amount of it in the film. So they were going for a more adult audience with this thing, and I think it was probably marketed more towards a kid audience. That might be why it didn't make as much money as it could have. So Dag activates all these robots. God, this kind of reminded me of the Metal Men from the old Superman cartoon. And so he activates them, and he's going to go down surrounded by these robots who are also armed and shooting. So this is kind of like they're blocking for him as he goes down through there, and they're getting hit left and right, by the defending robots of the complex. And so he kind of gets, he can't get through these big blast doors. So he sends Arthur up with the ship. The ship is called Starchaser. He fires at this big transport that's floating, hovering up above, and crystals fall through that into the ship's hold. So he finds another way to steal the crystals. And that is when Lord Zygon shows up and starts blasting Dag's remaining robots. And seeing Zygon brings Orin out of the ship and to the rescue. And it's a very clumsy rescue, but it works. And we do get to see the sword, lit up there. The duo manages to escape with a kidnapped Silica. And she kind of just got in the way of the firefight. She thought it was some kind of a drill, and she was going out there to complain about it because it was causing a lot of problems. So Silica and Arthur are going to sort of be our C-3PO and R2-D2. Arthur more in the C-3PO vein. Silica more like an R2-D2. So he grabs her for cover. They run into the ship. They roar off. Zygon recognizes Orin, knows he's not dead, knows he has the sword, and he muses, "The Kakan has returned." What is the Kakan? Well, we'll find out about that. So as they rocket away from the planet through space, Orin thinks about those he has left behind, while Dag does some reprogramming on Silica. She is, in fact, a model G2 fembot. And the reprogramming makes her very compliant, and it's like she's kind of in love with Dag. And Dag's not a good guy, because this is primarily so he can sell her at their next port of call. So he's not a real sympathetic guy. He's kind of out solos Han Solo in this respect. He's really kind of a bastard. So an alert is put out from Zygon on Dag's ship, and it's received at the aforementioned port of call, Togo Togo, a den of thieves that they're heading for. Just want to show this background. Again, you can see it's a little more grown up, but also just very creative. It just looks really, really cool. And I love the look of the whole place. Like, they go down, it's in this crevice. They go down, there's like this city built around them. It's kind of like this desert world with rings. But Orin is complaining. I have to get back to Trinia to find the blade, and Dag is just not interested. And he says, well, I mean, good luck walking across, 50,000 miles of vacuum. He's like, look, we're here and you're just going to have to deal with it. So he heads off with Silica to auction her off and make a little money, which of course he doesn't tell her. Orin wanders off, unsure of what his next move is going to be. So Dag ends up trying to sell crystals to this guy. You see the women with him. Really amazing art. It's just really, really beautifully done. Orin has some kind of misadventures walking around this complex, including at one point talking to this fortune teller who sort of fills him in. She sees he has to go to like a rainforest or something to find something, the blade, whatever. Well, he ends up at that auction. And he sees Silica up there and like, well, this must be a mistake. So he starts bidding on her. He has no money. And he's bidding against this woman who's kind of an aristocratic woman with this robot. And he manages to outbid her. Now, this lady, Aviana, is going to be important to the story later. And you might notice she bears a striking resemblance to Elan and has the same voice actress. So that's going to be important. Well, Dag ultimately shells out the money to get Silica back. So maybe he has a conscience after all. But of course, the bad guys catch up with them because the alert is out and they have to blast their way out of Togo Togo. Is this derivative of Mos Eisley? Yes. Is it also cool in its own right? Absolutely. Great design, great animation. And man, you could have gotten some really cool action figures out of this movie. Really cool action figures. So we now get a little glimpse of the bad guys, and we're filled in a bit on their plans. Systems are falling under their control. They have assembled a fleet. It's not finished yet, but these guys are on the move. They got some big, big plans. But Zygon is worried about this boy, this hilt. They can't really understand, but he's obsessed, and he's like, you have to find him, and you have to destroy him. Top of the orders. What is going on? So meanwhile, Orin and Dag make their rendezvous in the desert to deliver the crystals that Dag stole and sold to that guy with the crazy looking women. And they're nearly killed in the process because of that price on Orin's head. But it backfires on the bad guys, and our heroes live to fight another day. But these other bad guys are hot on their trail. And I do mean hot on their trail because Dag decides to take Orin to Nova Luna, this place that he's been told he has to go. And before you know it, they are under attack. You see this dude, they're on like these sort of little, flying scooters with laser beams and stuff. Again, would have looked great with action figures back in the day. And so we end up with a really neat dogfight, Starchaser versus 6 or 7 of these ships. That ends when the Starchaser crashes into the forest in Nova Luna. And I'm telling you what, again, because of the computer animation, these things look really, really good. You get a movement quality that you don't even quite get. Well, you get in later Star Wars. You don't get it in the first movie. But these guys they were doing a nice job on the animation. So they crash. The bad guys are there. Looks bad for the home team, but Orin was thrown clear, and he is not found. They grab Dag. They're going to take him back. Silica seems like she's been destroyed. She's just lying there, not moving. I don't think they even know about Arthur. So Dag is going to prison. The others are at this point, they're still free. So Orin is found unconscious by a mysterious rider on a crazy looking horse thing, who turns out to be Aviana. She takes him back to her palace, which is very, very cool. When Orin awakes, he thinks it is Elan at first. When he mentions crystals, she assumes he's a crystal runner, but comes to find out he was actually a miner. And like everyone else, she didn't think humans did any mining, so she's not sure she can trust him. And she should know because her father is Morbro, the supreme governor of the Bordragon system, which apparently is the system they're in. Well, there's an incident with the sword, the blade suddenly coming and it cuts this canopy rope, so the canopy bed kind of falls on them. This triggers a memory from Aviana from her planetary history lessons. So while she's looking it up, we see Dag in the midst of being tortured. Great line here from Zygon. Try to imagine a needle, the thickness of a human hair, slowly thrust between your eyes and penetrating your skull. He wants to know where the boy is, but of course Dag actually does not really know. And it does start to feel even a little more Star Wars-y at this point. So Orin and Aviana learn more about the Kakan. 1,200 years ago, a man with a golden hilt crushed a planetary dictatorship. 600 years later, a man with a bladeless sword freed Galaxy 13 from Nexus, who tried to conquer the galaxy with electronic mind control. There's no record of the sword's continued existence, as it was presumed lost after the final battle on the planet Trinia. So clearly, this is the hilt that they have. Naviana thinks that her father can help, but her robot disagrees, so they're just going to have to go help themselves, rather than going to her father and get Orin back to Trinia. Well, of course, the bad guys detect the entrance of Supreme Governor Morbru's ship into the system and alert Zygon about this. Our heroes arrive in the complex, planning to sort of brazen their way past the guards. I mean, this is a princess, sort of, so she figures she can get them in, she can get things settled. And you do get the vibe here of the Death Star rescue and of the scenes on Bespin. And I just wanted to show this background here, that bridge they're walking across. That's the sort of the complex that we saw earlier. This is an upper portion of it. Well, when Commissioner Zygon appears, Aviana thinks, all right, we're saved. Orin can tell him about the humans in the mines, but they soon learn that Zygon knows all about it and is, in fact, behind all of it. He is the bad guy. When they struggle, the sword springs to life and cuts Zygon, revealing that he is a robot, but not just a robot. He is the robot. He is Nexus, putting the pieces back together to finally conquer the galaxy. Bum, bum, bum. But you'd need millions of robots to make that work. But I have millions of robots. They've been slowly taking over for the past 12 centuries. The human slaves were to free robots up for the master plan. They were reprogramming the mining robots to be warriors. That's why the humans are there. That's why they're not using the robots to do the work anymore. The Kakan stopped him last time, but now you've only prolonged the inevitable transfer of power from human to robot. And without the sword, Orin has no chance. Looking bad for the heroes. But all is not lost. Because, in fact, Silica was not killed by the crash. She's still alive. I mean, she's a robot, but you get it, alive. And she's working on Arthur and getting the ship repaired. And I love in this, Arthur, as she's repairing him, he's like opened up. And he's like, would you put me back in the ship immediately, you pervert? Don't look at me like this. And so they're arguing back and forth. And at one point she calls him an ungrateful son of a bitch. So you got to figure R2 was probably saying things like that to C-3PO. We just didn't understand what he was saying. So with Orin, Aviana, and Dag in prison, Zygon decides to move up his timetable and try to conquer the system, even though he doesn't have all of his ships completed. He thinks Surprise will win the day, and he's also got the governor's daughter as a hostage. He is one system away from subjugation of all sentient life. He will not fail this time. We get a nice scene with Orin and Aviana in their prison cell, kind of connecting, learning about each other. Orin is desperate to free his people and save them from Zygon. But before we can get to love's true kiss, robots show up to escort Aviana to Zygon's flagship to use her as a human shield. Cool shot of the attack force being assembled, thousands of robot troops being loaded on these ships, on these vehicles. This is one of the battle cruisers that they have. Has a little bit of a Klingon feel to it. Very cool stuff. So how are Dag and Orin going to get out of this thing? Well, remember that starfly that showed up in the swamp? Well, it isn't an insect, in fact. And it tells him, that, it starts, floating around him, and he realizes like it's sentient. And he says, get me the hilt. And it says, don't need hilt. But he's like, no, I do. I need the hilt. Go get it. Okay. So off it goes. And at one point it like possesses this robot that shot at it and causing it to blow its own head off with a little giggle. Now, of course, this is a robot, but still it's kind of more, it's more graphic than anything you ever gotten in Star Wars, to be completely honest. I mean, like original Star Wars. So the little will-o-wisp flies to the command center, and its presence seems to cause interference on all the computer screens and everything. So they're all trying to figure out what's going wrong. And it picks up the hilt, sort of like with telekinesis or something, flies off with it, unnoticed. And no, Orin has the sword, and he uses it to cut him and Dag out of their cells. And so now we get some very cool, like Death Star, stealthy, moving around the complex stuff. They managed to sneak onto the cruiser holding Aviana. And again, love these designs. This is Zygon's fleet admiral. So once he's up in space, he clears the fleet to go to light speed, and they do. But they're going in different sections, like the different squadrons. So you see some of those little dots light up, and then whew, you get those streaks across, and then another one goes. Looks really, really cool the way they do that. Back to Arthur and Silica. So she's finishing up. Arthur's still complaining. They finally take off to go save Dag, who she's primarily concerned with, but of course Orin as well. The fleet decelerates in the system, and as they start to bring weapons online, our heroes are sneaking around the flagship. And is it weird that I get sort of like a Traveler role-playing game vibe off of Dag? I've never actually played the game, but I feel like he'd be one of the dudes that you play in that game. He's kind of the smuggler. I really enjoyed the character. I thought this was a great shot too. So before you know it, they're surrounded by robots, but Orin accidentally hits this button that opens a hatch and expels most of the robots on the ship into space. And then we see from one of the other cruisers, we see this kind of cloud moving towards them, and thunk, 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 these robots start hitting the windows of the spaceship. Another really great shot in this thing. They just do such a great job. So before all the warheads can be armed, Orin and Dag bust into the command center, and Orin literally disarms the robot, like right before he can push the button. And he gets this kiss from the rescued princess, and she actually kind of takes him by surprise. These characters have a real spark to them that a lot of movies, frankly, characters in movies lack. And again, I think I liked these characters. I think it's one of the things that really got me to like this film. They're not like, massively inventive or anything, but with the voice work and with the writing, they just really worked for me. So when Zygon gets word that there are problems on the flagship, he's not pleased. And in fact, I spend a fair amount of my morning and evening commutes looking like this in my car. So when communications with the ship are abruptly ended, he notices that sword hilt is gone, and he knows some stuff is about to go down. We get another nice battle between spaceships, really excellent. Planet side, Silica and Arthur are slowly making their way to Togo Togo. They're spotted by enemy ships, or so they think. It's actually the flagship being pursued by the attack squadrons. As the flagship is moving through this canyon, Dag spots Starchaser, and they help destroy the last of the pursuit ships. And so you get this, they're flying through the canyon. It looks really, really, really good. We're talking 85 again here. No, 85, sorry. I did another review today for something from 87. I'm old. I get things confused sometimes. So the enemy ships, though, are now above the planet, ready to rain down their missiles. Dag is trying to get the main targeting computer for the fleet. He's trying to tie into it so he can set off the missiles before they can launch. Time is running out, slams his fists down on the computer as one of those little starfly entities appears. It shows him the proper button to push. And so the enemy fleet is destroyed. By the way, this looks great. Just bomb, 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 bomb. And you see it from up above, like the planet's surface. You see all these little explosions up in the sky. So the immediate danger is gone, but Zygon remains. Now, Zygon's like second in command, wants to evacuate, but he's like, no, he'll be coming for me next. He's pretty calm and collected here. And I love that I freeze framed while this guy who's being shaken is blinking. Okay. Why do I love that? Because he doesn't need to blink. You don't have to animate him blinking as he's being shaken back and forth. But they did, and it shows you the quality of the animation and the care that they took in this thing. So, of course, he is right. They are coming for him. They come to Trinia, flying in towards this fortress thing, and it's closed up tight. And Silica knows, though, that there is this vent in the processing area. So in they go, hoping that they got the right place. Well, they're not in the right place. They're not in the vent. They're actually in the crystal waste tube. Here's one of those shots I mentioned of Silica's posterior. Again, they're going for a grown-up audience. And look, it's pretty tame compared to some stuff you'd probably find nowadays. So they release this black liquid, like this waste liquid that starts flowing through the tubes. You can see that coming at them. That's the Starchaser. The cruiser is in front. The Starchaser is very soon in front because Arthur's like, oh my God, I'm going to die. And, but in escaping from this waste, they end up locked by this tractor beam. So Silica and Arthur in Starchaser, they're almost out. They're flying up through this tube now. And the cruiser is locked and it's getting pulled down. So they're almost out of it. She's like, no, I got to save Dag. They go back down and they basically get in the way of the tractor beam. So now they're trapped. Dag, Orin, and Aviana get away. So they're looking for a way down into the mines. Dag notices all the crystal and realizes this could be a profitable venture after all. So again, a little bit of Han Solo in them. But they're soon under fire from these cannons, and they have to start blasting away. And Zygon orders all the units in there to attack. All these fighters are scrambled. Again, some great spaceship battle stuff in here. Love this design. So after this big explosion, Zygon's sub-commander finally flees the scene. He's done. He flees outside just as one of these fighters is hitting this bridge. And that's him seeing this explosion coming straight at him. And it hits him all right. And that same crashing fighter kind of caroms off of this big tower and goes down into where that tractor beam was. And it gets in the way, and the Starchaser gets out. Very reminiscent of the scene where the Millennium Falcon shoots out of the second Death Star as it's blowing up. Okay, so look, I'm at a point here in this movie where I love every Star Wars reference. I don't see it like a ripoff. It's like I'm watching Star Wars again as a kid. I was having a good time with it. Zygon orders all the fighters to set their engines for ion overload and ram the flagship. And of course, they're robots, so they will, because they don't have a sense of self-preservation in that regard. And this finally works. Takes the flagship down. Orin awakens in the wreckage, runs to Aviana. She's okay. Dag has a broken leg. And Silica and Arthur land to save him. She's very worried about him. And Orin tells them he must go free his people. He wants Aviana to stay with Dag. It's too dangerous. And she agrees. But then she spies Zygon heading down through the tower like this elevator. And she goes after him. So now we've come full circle. We're back in the mines. The altar starts to open its mouth. The crowd starts chanting Zygon. But it's not Zygon. It's Orin. And he tells the people that the rumors are correct. There is an upper world, and it is beautiful. But the people don't believe. They're afraid to believe, and Zygon appears. And we now know there's only one way this is going to be settled. Snicker snack. the sword comes out and Zygon goes down, but not out. Aviana appears, giving him a chance to grab her. He demands the hilt or he will kill her. Orin kind of has a flashback of losing Elan the same way, so he hands it over. But Zygon cannot make it work, but he's still stronger. So he grabs Orin and throws him over the edge of that chasm. As Orin holds on by his fingers, the little entity appears again with a message. You don't need the hilt. As Zygon crushes Orin's fingers with one boot, Orin manages to grab his leg, and he pulls back, and that pulls Orin up out of the chasm. And now Zygon backs away towards his laser pistol. Orin finally manifests the blade without the hilt. And it goes badly for the a-hole. Okay, again, a little bit of Darth Vader there. And then Orin comes at him and essentially gives him the Darth Maul treatment with a dash of Anakin. He falls off the edge and down into the lava. And that's the end of Nexus/Zygon. Good guys win. Orin's people are free. And up above, though, there's still a little bit of a battle between the Starchaser and some of these enemy fighters. Silica hits one of the fighters, and it crashes into these big repositories of crystals. And, oh my God, what have I done? And they get out of there quick because, boom, there goes the giant complex above ground. And in the aftermath, we see the heroes reunited. Dag kisses Silica and gets electrocuted in the bargain, but it's kind of neat. He's like, oh, you saved me. And he does it without even thinking. It's really kind of cute. Orin uses his newfound powers to heal his brother's blindness, and the Kakan appear and offer to take Orin to a higher plane. But he decides to stick around for Aviana, for his brother. He wants to live for a while in this beautiful upper world. And we pan up to the stars where we see what looks like the hilt of a sword. All right. So is this movie a bit derivative of Star Wars? Yes. And I don't care. It has action, romance, comedy. I genuinely laughed at some of the stuff. Some really great design. Some really solid animation. Cool characters that are well acted. In the post-Star Wars world, this movie does derivative right. It's a very fun film. And in my opinion, it is very much worth your time to watch this thing. Would be cool to see it actually in 3D. It'll never get re-released in theaters, especially not as a 3D film. It ain't happening at this point. It made about $3.6 million back in the day. So it lost money. But fact of the matter is, very cool film. And very, in my opinion, very much worth a watch. Let me know in the comments what you think, if you remember Starchaser, maybe from childhood, or if you've seen it recently. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the film. Leave those in the comments. If you enjoyed this little review of Starchaser, The Legend of Orin, please give it a like, maybe subscribe, maybe share with a friend. I do a lot of reviews, not just of animation, but of all sorts of movies and TV shows and comic books and regular books and toys and just about anything else I could figure out. So you might enjoy this channel. Give it a look. You can, click on the channel and see all the nonsense that I have. I got a lot of videos. But until next time, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun out there. Watch Starchaser. I will see you hopefully again soon in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.